welcome to the Roll and Rock podcast presents Wrestlecast. My name is Rene, and I'm here with my two co-hosts, Rocky.
Hey, everybody.
And my second co-host, Roland.
How's it going, everybody?
And today we're joined by a friend of mine from high school, Jose.
How's it going, guys?
And he's been watching wrestling probably as long as I have. So you're looking at two guys that have probably 60 years worth of wrestling watching between the two of us. On today's episode, we are covering tag teams, some of our favorites from each era or so. So let's just go ahead and get started. So to start off, we're going to be talking about our favorite tag teams in the 1980s. I'll go ahead and kick it off and say one of my favorite tag teams in the 80s was the Rockers, Shawn Michaels and Marty Jannetty. Two guys that pretty much opened the door for a lot of future, how they affected the tag team scene and inspired a lot of future tag teams with their high-flying style. You could basically say Hardy Boys, Edge and Christian, when you think of Shawn and Marty. And they were just incredible. There were always stories about them, how they would basically practice moves on their action figures. And if they could do it with the action figures, then they'd go practice it out in the ring. It's one thing that's surprising with them, though, is that they actually never won the tag team titles. Apparently, they won them at a Saturday night's main event, but there was a fuck up in the ring where the ring ropes broke, and it just messed up the entire match against the Hart Foundation, who they beat during the match. But because of the ring rope mistake, and they weren't able to edit the match back together, they never actually aired the match, so they technically never won the tag titles.
Oh, that's awful.
Yeah. And of course, their matches against Arn and Tully, which I'm sure they'll be mentioned on this list as well, were just incredible. Any Rockers memories for you guys? Jose?
One of the ones that always sticks out to my mind is the one that led to the breakup, which was the match against the Legion of Doom, where there's a mistake on the spot made where their move used to be a crossbody. One of the moves was crossbody, and then the partner would drop kick them into their opponent and roll for the pin. But instead, there's a turn that happens where I think either the Hawk or Animal turns their back, they take the kick and fall on Shawn and cause the pin, and then after that's where you start getting the seeds into the breakup, which then of course we've seen the barbershop spot where Shawn super kicks and then throws Marty through the pane glass window, which just is an iconic moment in itself.
Bobby's line. like look at that coward trying to get away. Yes, after Shawn throws.
Like trying to jump out the window.
Yeah, it's crazy. The Rockers have become synonymous with the whole who's going to be the Shawn and who's going to be the Marty. When it comes to teams breaking up, because Shawn went on to main event like 7 or 8 WrestleManias, 4-time world champion, 3-time Intercontinental, Mr. WrestleMania, all this accolades, and at one time probably the greatest wrestler on earth. And Marty became Marty, the guy who apparently murdered somebody and wants to fuck his kid.
Yeah.
And
murdered more than one person and wants to fuck his kid.
So I'll move on to Roland. What's one of your favorite teams from the 80s, man?
There's a lot, because I love the Midnight and the Rock and Roll Express. I love those guys. But when I think larger than life tag team, as a little Roland, being a kid, like a wee kid in the 80s, I have to think Legion of Doom, LOD, Hawk and Animal. I don't have any specific matches of theirs because it was just, they encapsulated the era of the 80s. The intensity, just the larger than life attitude. When those guys came out and those huge spikes on their shoulder and just the energy, it was just wow. I actually, I sometimes I wonder, I mean, why they had the manager.
Mm-hmm.
You know? Because it's like I know they were all three relatively close too. But it was just like they were definitely, when they came out, everybody just was instantly drawn to them.
Yeah, they were ass kickers, man. Like, I wouldn't want to fuck with either guy, man. But
No.
their finisher was fucking devastating too, man. The Doomsday Device. Basically, they said that anytime they didn't do the Doomsday Device in the match, it's because the other guy was too much of a pussy to take it, basically.
I mean, and it's that finish. It's such. I think it's probably one of my favorite tag team finishes of all time, because I mean, even probably as kids, we kind of did it in the pool with friends. You know, somebody who holds somebody up in the shoulder, and somebody would just run off the platform and, bam, take it. And if anything, Rene, you probably remember this from back in high school when I was doing the backyard wrestling stuff. Like, I actually took that on the ground, and it knocked me the fuck out. Like, I saw stars when I got hit with that thing.
The biggest thing I remember from the backyard wrestling stuff in high school is someone choke slamming. Was it Marvin in the lunchroom through like the fucking table?
No, it was Camacho and Lenny. That's that
okay.
spot.
Yeah, the dude started like convulsing, and like they had to call the ambulance for him and shit.
Yeah, it was wild.
It was brutal. Yeah, as far like you mentioned, Paul Ellering being part of the team, it doesn't seem like they needed them because most of their promos were like yelling, screaming, or whatever. But they got their point across. Ellering, they were actually close with Ellering, and Ellering was a big part. Like he actually assisted them by booking their travel, all that stuff, and so that's why he was always around them. But I mean, he was a big part of the act. Now, when it got terrible is when they started walking around with like that puppet.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. But no, and I was going to say that's one of the few instances too that you actually see where the manager stays with them and is actually friends with, like, close friends with the people they're managing. You don't see that a whole heck of a lot.
And they definitely had a lot of influence. Another team in the 80s, which I'm sure we'll mention, is Demolition, was obviously a knockoff of them. I mean, if you grew up watching WCW, NWA, then Demolition were a knockoff of Legion of Doom. But if you grew up only watching WWE stuff, and the Road Warriors came in later, they seemed like they were the knockoff of Demolition.
Right. Now that would have been a great match. Those two tag teams to go at it.
Yeah, that it's a match that they should have done and just never did. It's kind of like the Hogan and Ric Flair thing. Why was that never a WrestleMania match when you had both guys? That's another match that should have done big numbers, man. But for some reason, I don't think they ever did it at a SummerSlam or Survivor Series, like nothing. What about you, Rocky? What's one of your favorite teams in the 80s?
I was trying to decide on who I would pick for this. And I think I would, thinking back to Little Rocky back then, the one that gathered my most attention was always a Rock and Roll Express. Robert Gibson and Ricky Morton. They sucked as singles, but as a tag team, they were great. And I guess the biggest thing I remember them from is their well, of course, what caught my attention is they were sort of like the Rockers. They were like a glam metal ripoff is what they went for. But that's what caught your attention. But they had a lot of good matches, and then they feuded with the Four Horsemen for a long time. And we all know that I hated the Four Horsemen back then. So they were always going against Tully and Arn back in the days all the time. And the belts would go back and forth a lot. And then before they went against Tully and Arn, they went against Ole and Arn too, and defeated them for the belts. So they were a great tag team. I think they still are a tag team. Actually, they've been going.
They're still competing.
And I was just going to throw this out here because it's I have to say this. The whole thing with glam metal is that everybody in those bands are like the prettiest men you've ever saw in your life. And Robert and Ricky are butt fucking ugly. How the hell did they pick them to be the Rock and Roll Express? I don't understand that.
You know what though? They had a big following with the girls, man. Like,
I know.
Anytime they came out there, man, you could hear them squeals, man.
I mean, you see them now, and you're like, they definitely aren't good looking now because they're like 70. But even if you see pictures of them from the 80s, you're like, how the hell were they the two guys that were picked to be the Rock and Roll Express? Look how fucking ugly they are.
Cornette tells a great story about, and he actually told it at like their Hall of Fame, where he walked into some Southern home and said there were two pictures on the wall: Jesus Christ and the Rock and Roll Express. And he said, and they were at equal height. Yeah, rock and roll, man. They were really good. The thing I remember most with them was I think they participated like when they did the first War Games against the Four Horsemen. I think it might have been them. They were either in the first or second one, but like you said, like they had the female fan base, and they had that sympathy from the crowd too, where they would just get their fucking asses kicked for the majority of the match and then turn it around in the last moments. But you definitely see their influence even nowadays. As you can see, they influence the Rockers and the Hardys, and how you could even say the Young Bucks today have a bit of their style in them as well. Any Rock and Roll Express memories for you, Jose?
Not too many, because during those days, I can't really say I paid too much attention. I remember them in NWA. I remember them briefly in early WCW, but nothing much more after that. I mean, can't really say I remember them, but I just don't remember much about them like that. I mean, everything I know now is more like in retrospect, looking back now and kind of going based off of that.
Yeah, I think most people will remember them for their feud against the Midnight Express too.
Yeah, that was like their big feud they had. That went on for like ever. It was like pretty much a generational feud they always had. Yeah, I mean, there was like 90 members of the Midnight Express or something. It was always a different member.
It was huge.
It was beautiful Bobby Eaton, and is it Stan Lane, I think, was a member too. They always had to have that thing at the beginning, with their name. So because they even had a Midnight Express in the WWE in the late 90s where it was Bob Holly and Bart Gunn. It was Bodacious Bart and Bombastic Bob. Which apparently originally was supposed to be Edge and Val Venus before they were Edge and Val Venus. Supposed to be like Adorable Adam and Vivacious Val or some shit like that.
What? I had no idea about that.
Yeah, I had no idea about that.
So I think Edge wrote about it in his first biography, and he was like, anytime he was like, he did not want to be part of it because he's like, anytime in wrestling you put the word new in front of it, it's destined to fail.
It was the New Age Outlaws.
Well, yeah, but that didn't have anything to do with the word.
Yeah, that was more of a. Yeah, that wasn't taking an old team and starting them over again.
Yeah.
All right. What about you, Jose? Who's one of your favorite teams from the 80s?
80s, I would say, like I mentioned earlier, would be the Hart Foundation. Again, just being a big Bret Hart fan that I am, and seeing, how I said earlier too, was they were one of those teams that could pretty much work well with anyone and put on a great match. And even though they only had 2 reigns as tag team champions, and in comparison, they probably don't seem that memorable, they still were a team that kind of stood out for that whole run. They were like the mainstay for WWF in the 80s as far as tag team would go. Like, they were the ones that could just kind of work with anyone. They had a great rivalry with the British Bulldogs, and given that they're all family too, they all knew each other and could, work well with each other.
Yeah, Bret and Anvil, I think they fit the perfect blueprint for a tag team as well. Like, you have the technical guy, and then you have the big bruiser guy, who could get that hot tag moment and stuff like that. The Anvil, by today's standards, probably doesn't look that, when he wrestled, it was basically a land of the giants. But that guy was a fucking beast, man.
Oh, yeah. He was a powerhouse.
And, I mean, for people that don't know, the reason he has the nickname the Anvil is because he could physically throw the anvil, like kind of like shot put almost. Yeah, like you said, they had some really great feuds, especially with the Bulldogs. Like you said, they were all brother-in-laws, basically.
Pretty much are all in-laws.
Yeah. So they all came from the dungeon and stuff like that. But yeah, they're one of my favorite tag teams, and Bret has he has that blueprint of like being in the tag team, becoming a single star, reaching that heavyweight title level. Like if you follow his career, it's just awesome how he progressed over the years.
Oh yeah.
And he was definitely one of my favorite guys in the 80s, 90s. It sucks that, like you mentioned, he's become kind of
bitter.
And I don't want to be a dick and complain about him because, the guy lost his brother and he's had a heart attack and he went through a lot of shit. So he has reasons to be bitter, but like sometimes he just goes overboard with it.
I mean, in a way, I like Bitter Bret because how blunt he is about shit, especially when even to WWE on their own programming, he'll be so blunt about what he doesn't like about it, and that all they can do is just sit and grin and eat it, because what are they going to do to him? He's already in the Hall of Fame twice. He doesn't need them. They just need him to come in for spots, if anything, or do like a little guest spot. So he just has that carte blanche to just say whatever he pleases and no repercussions.
Yeah, I'll say that I watched I went back and watched the Bret Hart, Shawn Michael interviews again from like 10 years ago or something now. And I I was watching those, and it was so he was so bitter in those interviews, but the shit that he would say, like, and Shawn Michaels is sitting right beside him, and he's like, it's his fucking fault, basically. Like, and you could just then they would like pan out and show both of them, and Shawn's just sitting there like, I was like, that is fucking awesome.
I can't remember the match. It was like this match that was getting like all types of praise, and they asked Bret Hart what he thought. He's like 4 out of 10.
Yeah.
Which ended up becoming a big ass meme, but I can't remember what the match was that he had rated it like that or whatever.
Or no, the latest one is they have nobody has their online show or they're on the network called The Bump or something like that. And they had him on there recently, and he flat out just called Triple H a 4 out of 10 wrestler right on there. And it's like the guy's the CEO of the company, already a Hall of Famer, and he just said, nah, he's a 4 out of 10 guy. Didn't have what it took.
Well, some would say he fucked his way to the top.
That's true. That is true.
Yeah. All right. So, we have our best tag teams and stuff like that. Is there any tag teams you guys really dislike from the 80s? We'll start with you, Roland, since I already know what your answer is going to be.
Now, I do want to say before I list this tag team, I have some respect for the wrestling abilities of Mr. Valentine. But fuck the tag team rhythm and blues. That is a shitty gimmick. And like I said, I like Valentine, but he's got the personality of a fucking cardboard box. So put him up as an Elvis impersonator, march him out there with Honky Tonk Man, who, fuck Honky Tonk Man too. I don't like him, can't stand him. He's got a shitty gimmick, and I don't know why he held on to that fucking Intercontinental belt as long as he did. Fuck both of those guys, and fuck that tag team.
All right. I'll agree with you. Basically knock off Elvis and Roy Orbison.
And here's the thing, Roy Orbison, one of the matches I even watched, they still dressed him up as Elvis. They didn't even try to get him nowhere near Roy Orbison. It's like, what the shit? If you're going to do it right. And they couldn't even do that. And I could also say that there's another tag team, and I'm going to keep this one short because I know a lot of people do like them, and I kind of respect them, but I can't really sit through some of their stuff, is the Fabulous Freebirds.
You took my pick.
Oh, did I?
Yeah, that's okay. Like my most hated of the 80s, the Fabulous Freebirds. Fuck them. They were like so shitty.
We'll pan over to Rocky. Go ahead.
They just they would come out and they would do their fucking gimmick, yeah. And like most of their match was the fucking gimmick. And like no one give a shit. Like, or at least I didn't as a kid. I was like, fuck the Fabulous Freebirds. Get off the fucking, let somebody come out that's decent. and I have to say, like, I don't want to put wrestlers down to their image, but their fucking whole image, the fucking Gerald curl they had going on, and the way they were always like, taking care of it in the ring. I just fucking hate them. And then and the jackets, like the jackets with those little fucking shorts. Like, it made no sense. I fucking hate it. I hate everything about Fabulous Freebirds when I was a kid. Still do. Like, when I see pictures of them, I'm like, fuck them.
The best thing they ever did was the first 5 minutes of Highlander, the movie. That was the quintessential peak of that tag team.
So in Rocky's words, just fuck the Freebirds and all incarnations. What about you, Jose? What's a tag team you disliked in the 80s?
in the 80s, I would say I didn't so much dislike them as much as I didn't care for them, would be the Rougeaus. And I like them better as the Quebecers, as the Mounties, and I'm trying to remember what else other gimmick they worked on. But when they were the Rougeaus, they were these annoying, clean-cut baby faces that I just wanted them to see get washed by every team they faced.
I don't know why I always enjoyed their theme song, the fake Americanism, to try to get the crowd to boom and stuff like that. But I think Jacques Rougeau was better with the mounted gimmick. For me, my answer is probably gonna be Power and Glory. It's Paul Roma and Hercules Hernandez.
Yeah, I remember them.
Paul Roma is just fucking horrible, and any interview he always says how he's better than everybody else in the fucking world and how he was shortchanged and shit like that. No, you weren't, dude. You and he's also the worst fucking horseman ever, by the way. So yeah,
and that's kind of that.
Even worse than Mongo.
I was gonna say Mongo. Like that's even putting Mongo in there.
Well, shit. You know what? They're both like just put them in a dark room with a knife and see who walks out.
That's the better horseman. You're alive. You're the better horseman.
I think Sid and Arn tried that.
Oh shit! What? I remember the story was Sid trying to attack someone with a squeegee too. But them and also the Bolsheviks, if you guys remember them.
Oh wow.
Nikolai Volkov. Now at least they were meant to be jobbers, so they could get away with that. But yeah, my least favorite tag team. Before we move on from the 80s, any talks about like some of the super teams of like the 80s, like the Mega Powers or anything like that? Any thoughts on them?
Not too much as them as tag team, because that was all meant to get from one point to the other. It was meant to get Hogan versus Savage. So even though they were a team, it's like also you had a Warrior in the 90s with Macho Man and the Ultimate. Was it Ultimate Maniacs?
Yeah.
And like it was just a thing to get from one point to the other. It wasn't really ever meant to be like a force in the tag team division.
Just a few other teams, just to throw out a few other names. They were big in the late 80s, the Twin Towers, Boss Man and Akeem, which was obviously a rib on Dusty. And we did mention Demolition, which, dude, those guys coming out with the BDSM gear, and like you're just 4 years old, you have no idea what the fuck is you're watching,
And then it all changes as you get into
it.
Oh, wait a minute.
Yeah, and I was Arn and Tully definitely deserve a shout out, and Strike Force, Tito and Rick Martel. They work pretty well together as well. But we'll move on to the 90s. I'll start out with my favorite tag team in the 90s, the New Age Outlaws. They got mentioned a little bit earlier. The Road Dogg and Billy Gunn, man. They're probably, I would go as far as and say they're probably my favorite tag team of all time. They kind of had the Hart Foundation thing where you had the smaller technical speedier guy with Road Dogg, and then you had the powerhouse with Billy. That entrance too, man, like Come on, who didn't go around their house doing that whole fucking entrance when you were a kid? They were part of D-Generation X, which, come on, they were, it was such a fun stable. They're 6-time tag team champions. They both had pretty successful singles, not like main event level singles careers, but they both won Intercontinental titles, things like that.
I just
but
feel
yeah.
sorry. I just feel sorry that he became Mr. Ass. Like, of all the gimmicks they could give him as a singles, that's what they gave him.
I never understood that. Like, they did the badass Billy Gunn. Like, why can't they keep it that instead of Mr. Ass?
He's Ass Man.
I mean, it kind of worked, but it was still shitty.
Billy Gunn's career ended when The Rock just fucking destroyed him on the promos, where Rock does this like Billy's prayer to God or whatever promo. It's like The Rock just destroys Billy. Like, Billy was not ready.
In like 5 minutes, he just ended his singles run.
Yeah. If you've never seen that promo, just look up like Billy's prayer to God promo. Like, you'll see someone's career end in about 5 minutes. But as a tag team, like I said, man, they were fucking great. The entrance, no one did shit like that. 20 years later, Enzo and Big Cass kind of tried to do something similar to what the Outlaws did, but they never were able to capture the magic that the Outlaws did. So to me, that's one of my favorite tag teams of the 90s. How about you, Jose?
For the 90s, I would actually go with, I would say something we mentioned earlier, the Dudleys. The Dudleys, even though they were kind of late 90s, early 2000s, but seeing them in ECW and being surprised that they were able to go to WWF at the time and kind of reinvent themselves, because if you saw ECW, you saw what they were like in ECW. You saw the kind of heat that they could draw and how they could just run a show and be able to kind of change it up in WWF and still kind of keep some of that edge that they had, but then also do comedy, do other stuff on there, and still be one of the most successful tag teams of that time, and being one of the 3 probably greatest tag team matches of all time with the TLC trilogy with the Hardys and Edge and Christian.
Yeah, they definitely should get mentioned in the 90s as well, the Hardy Boys and Edge and Christian. Yeah, I mean, the type of heat the Dudleys could get when they were in ECW, like, I can't even repeat any of their promos on this podcast because it is definitely not PC culture. But yeah, I mean, those TLC matches that they had with the Hardys, like, that's some of the most incredible matches you will ever see. If you've never seen these TLC matches, like, pause the episode and go look up SummerSlam 2000 and WrestleMania 17. You will not be disappointed.
No, yeah, you're right. Those are, I mean, a lot of matches I've forgotten. Like, I remember the wrestlers, but I've forgotten like their matches. But I will never forget the TLC matches for as long as I live. They were amazing at the time. I mean, they were like jaw-dropping at the time. Some of the stuff that happens in those matches, you're like, fuck, what the fuck? You were literally like, what the fuck is going on right now when you watched it? And to this day, it's still the same.
And after you said what the fuck, they do something else to top that.
Exactly. They were amazing.
That spear Edge does from like the top of a 20-foot ladder, that shit was fucking nuts. And I mean, I know Edge just came back from retirement, but I mean, when you think about it, all those guys, besides the Hardys, are fucking retired for a reason,
Like you said, though, with the Dudleys, one thing I always found amusing was they were so raw and energetic. They were one of the reasons I would watch ECW back in the 90s. They were one of the tag teams I was just like, holy shit, these guys are awesome. And then when they came over to WWE, I really did not like how the gimmick they gave Bubba Ray, the stuttering and the stammering and kind of the inbred kind of just dumbed them down a lot. And I'm like, what? This is literally nothing like what they were in ECW. And I'm not surprised, but I'm very thankful that they actually were able to outgrow that gimmick and continue with it to end where they did.
Yeah, I think it's once they started to be allowed to have like those tables matches with the Hardys and stuff like that, that they were like, all right, yeah, these guys are more than what we've given them so far. So,
I think I mean, I watched them in ECW too, and I watched them, afterwards. But I actually think that gimmick like helped, like because they were such heels in ECW. But then the gimmick started out, as like hillbillies, but it led into like a lot of comedy. And no one can tell me they don't remember the extra Dudleys that came out like later on.
Oh yeah.
yeah, well, the gimmick was that their dad was a traveling salesman who would sleep around town or whatever. So he slept with a white woman, and that was Bubba. And he slept with a black woman. That's where Devon came from. And he slept with a Native American woman, and we had dances with Dudley, and there was
Spike
Big
Dudley.
Dudley and Little Spike Dudley and Chubby Dudley and all these other fucking Dudleys.
I just want to say that I love Spike Dudley more than more than any of the rest of them. But it was like I think it played into them like as they went along, because it gave them that good comedy effect, and it made them like a lasting impression on everybody. And like, yeah, it started out as like a dumb gimmick, but like the way it started out, plus like their ability, like really gave them a good backbone that just left them up to this day.
They're the only guys to win the WWE, WCW, ECW, TNA, Impact, IWGP titles. I mean, I want to say they're like 26-time tag team champions or some shit.
Yeah, they took the record from the Road Warriors, because before that, the Road Warriors had all the territory titles that were known. So they were WCW, WWF, NWA, AWA, and I'm trying to forget which other big, territory promotion back in the 80s. They held all of those regional titles, and it wasn't until the Dudleys that they're the ones that stumped in that feat.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would say another comparison that I draw to them and the Road Warriors is that they also have a very memorable finish that used to be a finish to all finishes, which was the 3D. I mean, in ECW, they used to break people's necks with that move.
Yeah, the 3D is definitely a great tag team maneuver, man. And like you said, they put people through tables with it, and it's definitely a maneuver that could pretty much be hit anywhere as well, not just in the ring, So what about you, Roland? What's one of your favorite tag teams of the 90s? I think Rocky took your Dudley's answer, but did you have anyone else in mind?
No, I haven't gave my answer yet.
Oh, okay. Go ahead, Rocky, then.
Well, like I like was I mean, there's so many tag teams in the 90s that I love. And it came down to two that I was trying to figure out which ones I wanted to pick. So the two that I was like, who am I going to go between? Is Harlem Heat and the Outsiders. And with my hat on, you can probably guess which one I picked. So I picked the Outsiders. And the reason I'm just gonna say they weren't that good of a tag team.
I mean, they won the WCW titles like 6 times, 7
They
times.
did, but they were never like a great like in-ring tag team. I don't consider them ever being a great in-ring tag team. But the reason I consider them such a good tag team is because of the NWO. They changed wrestling when they came into WCW, and I mean that just makes what they are. Otherwise, I would probably pick Harlem Heat, but but like they changed the face of wrestling by starting the NWO. So
you can't go wrong with Harlem Heat though. They were a great fucking tag team.
I love Booker T to this day. I have to say, I know I said I don't watch wrestling, but I do watch Booker T's promotion quite often online. And I watch his podcast like every week. I love Booker T. Booker T is like one of my favorite all-time wrestlers, really.
Booker's hilarious. Booker actually that tag team reminds me a lot of the Hart Foundation in a way, with how Booker went from being in that tag team for like 5 or 6 years to moving up the card as well, going to winning those secondary titles like the TV title, the US title, and then finally becoming world champion. As I'm rewatching some of the older shows, such a shame that WWE didn't strike when the poker was hot with him, like in 2000, late 2002, early 2003. Like that, he should have been world champion so badly, man.
He should have gone over Triple H in that WrestleMania match.
Yeah, I'll be covering that when we do our WrestleMania 19 episode.
I mean, he was like, when he was with Harlem Heat, though, I mean, they were like, they were getting a big push. Like, they were a big tag team because they had Sensational Sherry with them. I mean, that right there tells you that they hit the big time when they start giving you Sensational Sherry as your maitre d'. They were a great tag team, and their entrance was great. The whole freaking Spinaroonie. I mean, Booker T kept that until this, until this day. Actually, he still does it. But it was a great entrance. Everything about him was great, and I love Stevie Ray. And I will say, I love Stevie Ray as an announcer. And I think that WWE like missed the ball with that too. They should have brought Stevie Ray in as an announcer, like, because he was great on the mic.
Yeah, I like Booker T, man. He's a great performer, great wrestler, and he's a very charismatic guy. His facial expressions and stuff like that when he's reacting to shit in his promos and stuff like that, it's fucking great, man. He's when Austin beat the shit out of him in that supermarket, is fucking incredible, especially when Booker like beats down this like ball guy thinking it's Austin, and you just hear the beer can pop open behind him, and as he does that slow turnaround, it's fucking fantastic, man. If for anyone that hasn't seen that supermarket thing, it's fucking great. But yeah, I mean, you can't go wrong with either answer you gave, man. Both
I love them both.
tag teams.
I would put the Outsiders as my, just for like historical preference. I mean, they created the Monday Night Wars by the Outsiders becoming a thing. But I would probably I would put Harlem Heat up there exactly with them.
Since we're mentioning Harlem Heat and the Outsiders, someone that kind of feuded with both of those teams is the Steiner brothers.
Yeah.
Steiner brothers are kind of late 80s, but 90s as well. But the Steiner brothers were fucking incredible too.
Steiner Kleiner, baby.
Yeah, Steiner doing those Frankensteiners back in the day, and some of those suplexes he would do with like doing a whole like 360 spin himself while suplexing somebody. Like he did a disservice to himself, man, by just getting overly big.
Roided.
Yeah. But because I mean, there was talks of when WWE brought them in of they thought about making Scott Steiner world champion actually. And for some reason, I guess Vince didn't see it at the time or whatever, but I think that's how Pat Patterson and Bruce Pritchard had like kind of pitched the Steiners. But he was a very talented guy, and I mean, the dude was doing Frankensteiners. Like I said, it's a move you didn't see in American wrestling at the time. Now, Hurricane Rana, everybody and their mama does one, but when he was doing them, it was very unique to the American wrestling scene.
And for someone his size to be doing that too.
Yeah.
I think one of the problems, and this is totally me speculating on this, but one of the reasons he may have gotten so jacked is because of that, because Vince was notorious for not liking dudes that weren't jacked and huge. If you weren't huge, he didn't consider you a world champion or one of the main eventers. Like you'd be a tag team or intercontinental, but that would be about it. So part of me wonders if he knew that Vince was looking at him, if that's one of the reasons that may have driven him down that path.
That could be very, very well true. I mean, we've heard that plenty of times about Vince wanting guys that fit that mold, the Hogan mold, the Lex Luger mold, things like that would catch his eye and what he would try to push as the main star. And that could have been what pushed Scott to go the way he did and go as hard as he did.
I'm going to mention two more tag teams that I'm a big fan of. First one is Owen Hart and the British Bulldog when they were a tag team in the mid-90s. They were fucking great. Owen carrying around his two slammies and shit like that. They were really good. And then they weren't a tag team for a long time, but the Rock and Sock Connection. They were fucking great. Like I said, they weren't together for a long time, but I mean, some of the matches they did like a Buried Alive tag team match against Undertaker and Big Show, and like they were 3-time tag team champions for like a combined like 15 days or something like that, but they were very entertaining.
I love the Rock and Sock Connection. I thought it was. I would actually, if I had to go back through and put like, I would put them as like my top tag team of all time, just because I loved everything about the Rock and Sock Connection. They were hilarious. Like it didn't matter if they were wrestling or not. Just them being in the ring, putting on a show was good enough. It was grade A wrestling from the Attitude Era. When you had like the Rock and Sock Connection.
Yeah, they did the Rock This Is Your Life segment.
Yeah.
Which they've tried to duplicate and has never worked again. They just had a certain touch, man.
They had.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say they had great charisma. They bounced great off of each other. Great rapport, which really made their comedy just seem very fluid. Like when you said like This Is Your Life, where they celebrated Rock's birthday, and then Rock immediately just comes on and was like, "The Rock's birthday's March 5th, you dumb son of a bitch." And just fucking kills it right there. And then Nick just sells the letdown so great.
What was so great about that the banner between the two was that The Rock always like played it off as if he hated it. He hated everything about it. And then they would show him backstage at sometimes, and then he would act like he liked it. So it was always like a love-hate and then it didn't matter. Like he was like, I hate it, always in the ring, and then the backstage sometimes he was like,
I think it was one of those situations where Mick was trying to get The Rock to break, so he would like continuously try to fuck with him. Like one of my favorites is where like someone beat down Foley or whatever, and The Rock is walking towards the ring or whatever, and Mick is like, "Win one for the Mixter," and and The Rock is already off camera, but he walks back into the camera. And he's like, "Who the hell is the Mixter?" And just keeps walking.
Didn't that whole like pairing start out as like The Rock didn't want to be part of it? Didn't they like start out as like Mick just like was like, we're doing the Rock and Sock Connection, and and Vince McMahon made it a tag team? I'm pretty sure that started out.
It was I think it was a feud with Undertaker and Big Show, and it kind of they were working as a tag team, which led to them attacking The Rock, attacking Foley, so that kind of led to them pairing up temporarily. You could tell we all grew up with the 90s because we've been talking 90s tag team wrestling more, but is there any other tag teams anyone has in mind?
I mean, I can't believe you forgot about some of the best promos from 1992. Sting and Sting and the British Bulldog.
Oh, as a tag team?
As a tag team when they had to fight Vader in the White Castle of Fear.
Shit.
Wow.
And Cheatham the Midget or whatever it was. That was
Play
terrible.
Play the game. God.
spin the wheel, make the deal.
Spin the wheel, that was it, yeah. Spin the wheel, make the deal, yeah. God, those promos were so awful. They were so abysmal. If anyone, and this used to be a pastime of mine on Sunday afternoons, was to look up old WCW early 90s promos because they were all bad. All of them were really, really bad. But they were so bad that I had to watch them.
Another tag team I like to give a shout out to is the Hollywood Blondes, Austin and Pillman.
Oh yeah,
they were very entertaining too. I love how they go to the ring just like doing their little fake camera thing and all that shit. And Austin didn't want to be any part of it, but like once he was in the team with Pillman, he found it to be so entertaining that he actually ended up enjoying it a lot. A lot of people might not know this, but usually whenever you see a picture of Austin, he's always wearing like this gold chain. That gold chain was actually given to him by Brian Pillman when they were in the Hollywood Blondes. Basically, Pillman was like, "Hey, we're supposed to be these big Hollywood guys, so here's a gold chain for you, and I'll wear mine, and we'll go to the ring wearing that shit." And so anytime you see like any of those old Austin like promo like photos and stuff like that from the late 90s, and he's always wearing that gold chain, that's actually the chain that Brian Pillman gave him.
Oh damn. Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I'm sure we already talked about the Hardy Boys.
Yeah. Hardys and Edge and Christian.
Yeah.
Great tag teams, man. It's crazy to me that Matt and Jeff are still wrestling to this day.
Still the fact that the capacity that they are.
And Jeff is still doing those fucking crazy bumps to this day, man.
How his body is not, how his bones have not just been ground to ash is beyond me. How he has a functioning back after seeing some of the falls I've watched him take over the years, I don't understand. The man's made of rubber.
All right, so since we talk about some of our favorites, what's some of our least favorite tag teams from the 90s? We'll start with you, Rocky.
Well, I'm going to say the funny thing is you guys were just like harping on how great they are. But the Hardy Boys.
Oh, like the Hardy Boys?
You don't like the Hardys, man?
I do not like the Hardys. It's not that I don't like the in-ring.
Get the fuck off the podcast, sir.
I do not like the Hardys. They're okay. So they're great in-ring performers. I'm not going to lie there. I mean, they had, like I said, the TLC matches, greatest matches of all time. I mean, however, the Hardy Boys just suck in every other way when it comes to wrestling because they have like no charisma. Like, I do not give a shit about either one of them. And no, I'm not. And Roland, don't bring up like the whole like brother
That
shit.
didn't happen in the 90s.
I know it didn't happen in the 90s, but it was fucking stupid even when it did happen.
It
like,
was, but that was what made it so good.
It just, I don't know. I just, like, I always just wanted them to lose because I was like, they suck as far as anything but in-ring appearance. To me, they were like the jobbers. You throw them in with Edge and Christian so you can get like a good match, and then they lose, and then you have Edge and Christian on the mic. So that was
will say I did love Edge and Christian versus the Hardy Boys. Those were freaking phenomenal matches.
I will say if you talk about the Dudleys, Hardys, and Edge and Christian, then yeah, Edge and Christian were the most charismatic.
Yeah.
Of the three teams, in my opinion. Like Edge could cut a fucking promo, as could Christian. I think that's what hurt the Hardys a bit, was that Madden. It took them a long time to get there. Like, once Matt Hardy became the whole deletion and all that stuff, he became way more comfortable on the mic. But yeah, for the longest time, neither Matt or Jeff could fucking cut a promo if their life depended on it.
You know, fun fact, going back and thinking about it, I don't ever remember really hearing them talk hardly at all throughout the 90s.
No, they had very Southern accents, especially
because
Jeff.
when I finally heard them, I think it was around the time of the deletion era, and all of a sudden I started hearing them. I'm like, whoa, I was not prepared for that North Carolinian accent. Come out. You sound more like me than you should sound. Whoa. I was not ready for that.
All right. How about you, Jose? What's a tag team in the 90s that you dislike?
Man, I mean, you had a lot in the mid-90s. You have Jacob and Eli Blue. You had the Beverly Brothers that were fucking horrendous.
Oh, they were fucking horrible.
Oh, shit. In WCW, had Mortis and Wrath. Fuck.
The fake Mortal Kombat era.
Combat guys.
Yeah.
Glacier,
yeah.
Now,
Glacier had that entrance, though.
Yeah.
He did. He had a badass entrance.
Light shows and fake snow.
Yeah. So for me, I fucking hated the American males in WCW. They were fucking terrible. I never liked all right, so they were kind of a big tag team, but couldn't stand them, is the Nasty Boys.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's who I was going to mention, the Nasties.
I agree with that one. Fuck the Nasty Boys.
Yeah.
I covered this in one of the mini episodes, but Eddie Guerrero actually wrote about them in his book, where he says that when he was tag teaming with Art Barr as Los Gringos Locos down in Mexico, he said that one of the Nasty Boys shaved his Art Barr's head right before they were supposed to have a mask versus hair match down in Mexico. So Eddie talks about, you don't fuck with people's livelihoods like that, because, Eddie and Art were supposed to lose and get their heads shaved.
Yeah.
So he says as payback, they were out at a restaurant, and Eddie just knew that they were like at a seafood restaurant, and Eddie literally sat in the back with a shitload of shrimp and just started, taking the shit off the shrimp, putting it in a bowl. And then after I guess he had filled up a whole fucking bowl of it, comes over and tells the nasties like that it's basically caviar.
Oh,
And
Oh,
So they're eating shrimp shit.
so he gave him a bowl of shit as payback. So yeah. Even before I read that story, I never cared for them. It's like the gimmick is kind of interesting, the tie-dye shirts, the long trench coats, all that shit, but yeah, fuck those guys. And then another tag team that comes to mind for me is, I like both guys individually, but I never liked them as a tag team, is Money Incorporated. Ted DiBiase and IRS. Like I said, as singles competitors, they were fine, but to me, they were just fucking boring as a tag team, man.
I like them a lot better than I do the Nasties. The Nasties are just.
Yeah.
Fuck the Nasties.
I think the only reason that Knobs got a job was he was probably going down on Hogan's knob to get a job.
How about another tag team, Men on a Mission? Never liked them.
God.
I didn't hate them.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like, meh.
And I'll also throw out the Headbangers. I just never cared for them.
Yeah, Headbangers remind me of just literal jobbers.
yeah,
Yeah.
they were just forgettable. They
And
weren't nothing.
Beaver
And then
Cleavage was more memorable than the Headbangers.
I remember Beaver Cleavage. Or just some of the random guys that they threw together as tag team. Ken Shamrock and Boss Man were tag team champions at one point because of the corporation. Owen Hart and Jeff Jarrett as a tag team. Kane and X-Pac as a tag team. I never cared for them either.
Trying to think if there's a tag team with Buff Bagwell. What was
That was the American Males.
American Males. It was him and Too Cold
Scotty
Scorpio.
Riggs.
No,
Scotty
Scotty Riggs. Yeah, Scotty Riggs.
And he turned on Riggs, poked out his eye, and then Riggs joined the flock with Raven.
Yeah. But any other tag teams in the 90s come to mind for anyone?
I would say one that stood out, and I don't think they ever got that big in WWE, even though they were horsemen, but I really loved the work with Malenko and Benoit as a tag team.
Yeah.
hell yeah.
And of course, that's given everything aside that what Benoit did and all that. I mean, you already know how that, that story and how terrible that was, and what a piece of shit he was for it. But the work that he put in with Dean as the Horseman, I really enjoyed that in the mid-90s.
You know what? Since you bring up the Horsemen, another shitty tag team version of the Horsemen, Arn Anderson and Paul Roma.
Oh,
when they tried to make them tag team like champions or whatever, like no. All right, so moving on. We're moving on to tag teams from between about 2000 to 2010. One of my favorite tag teams from that era is Los Guerreros. Eddie and Chavo. I know Chavo doesn't get the love Eddie got, but they were great as a tag team. Those segments that they would do where they'd like show up at like someone's house and like commandeer their pool or steal someone's car or all that shit. The lie, cheat, and steal stuff that they would do was fucking great. I've been rewatching a lot of these old Raws and SmackDowns I've been doing a rewatch of basically all of it. I started back like in 1985. I'm currently in 2004 and just rewatching some of the Eddie Guerrero stuff, man. Fuck, was he talented, man. I just
Look, yeah,
miss him.
Chavo was a talent too. Like shit. Like I loved
Yeah.
Chavo back in the day when like in the cruiserweight when he was like going against like Jericho and Dean Malenko. Fuck, he was great back then.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he just never. He was just overshadowed by Eddie, man. Because like you said, Chavo was an incredible talent, man. But Eddie Guerrero was like a 5-tool player, man. Like he could do it all. He was charismatic. He could cut a promo. He could deliver 5-star matches. And he was just incredible. I can't praise Eddie enough. Like he's definitely one of those guys I miss seeing a lot, man. I mean, obviously he'd be retired by now, but yeah, I definitely miss him.
No, yeah, definitely. And saying, giving Chavo his props from somebody who saw him back in WCW when he was in the cruiserweight division there and seeing how he really became more comfortable as a character throughout the years. By the time he hit to Los Guerreros, he really had a stride and had a grip on what worked, what didn't work as far as promos, how to play off of people. Whereas you can see when he was a cruiserweight in WCW, you can still see how kind of green he was. And Eddie worked with him a lot even then. So, with forcing him in the LWO and doing all this other stuff that kind of got him there, where you look at Chavo now and he does stuff here and there. I mean, last big thing he did was the Lucha Underground stuff, which was great. But you could definitely see how comfortable he got by the time they became a tag team and had that gimmick run.
Yeah. Yeah, they like you said, you definitely see the difference between like mid-90s Chavo to how much more comfortable he got when he started teaming more with Eddie. But yeah, like I said, I can't praise Eddie enough. Definitely miss him to this day, and one hell of a performer, man. Any how about you, Jose? Any 2000s tag teams that comes to your mind?
2000s tag teams, I really enjoyed the 2-man power trip of Austin and Triple H. Them running roughshod, Reign of Terror. It was really, really cool because even that wasn't how it was supposed to originally happen, because originally it was supposed to be Triple H going after Austin as a face and Austin as a heel when that turn happened at WrestleMania 17. And Hunter, I guess, knew well enough that if he ran against Austin, he wasn't going to get anything out of it. It was going to be meant for Austin to just keep getting, staying on top. So instead he, politically moved instead of being at his side and doing the 2-man power trip up until when he tore his quad, and then that kind of put an end to that. But
I remember the next night after Austin turned heel where they just beat the shit out of The Rock inside the steel cage and became a team. Which kind of leads to, I know the team Roland wanted to talk about, they started feuding with the Brothers of Destruction, Kane and Undertaker. What did you want to say about them, Roland? I know you enjoy them a lot.
Yeah, to me, it was two great things go great together. I loved Undertaker throughout the '90s, and Kane as well, and the whole storyline with that. When they actually teamed up as a tag team, I was like, "Holy shit, this is awesome!" When they started feuding with them, the other thing that I remember was I was not expecting them to show back up. I guess it was at WrestleMania 14, or no, not 14. In 2015, I want to say, or 2014 when they showed back up to fight the Wyatt family.
Oh yeah, that was like it was late 2015,
Yeah,
like around Survivor Series.
yeah. And that was, to me, that was a delightful surprise. That was actually and that was the last time I think they were ever together, the Brothers of Destruction. But that was
Unfortunately, they came back together for Saudi Arabian
oh yeah,
pay-per-view versus
The less you
Triple
say about that,
H
the better.
yeah.
versus Triple H and Shawn Michaels, who came out of retirement after 8 years. It was not pretty, man.
We don't talk about that. We just kind of keep
All
that
right.
to the road.
We'll just bring out the little Men in Black thing and click.
That didn't happen. So, one of the reasons this is my favorite memory is I was actually sitting with my friend Joe and we were watching WrestleMania. And so, yeah, I didn't watch a lot of actual, Raw or anything like that. So a lot of the stuff as I was watching this pay-per-view would just, you don't know anything about the story or anything that's leading up to a lot of it. So then all of a sudden, boom, there it is. The Brothers of Destruction are back. And that was the greatest squash match I have ever laid eyes on.
Yeah, I always enjoyed when they worked as a team. I remember when at one point, I want to say it was 2001 Royal Rumble where they were working as a tag team.
Mhm.
And they're both out there just fucking throwing guys out left and right. And after they beating everyone down, like the music hits and like Scotty Too Hottie or some shit is supposed to come out to the ring, and he's just like looking at the ring, and Undertaker and Kane are just standing there, and Lawler's like, I wouldn't go in there, But to kind of go back on what Jose mentioned with a two-man power trip too of Austin and Triple H is a tag team that was wasn't very long term, but Jericho and Benoit teaming up to beat Austin and Triple H in a match on Raw. Definitely 5-star match. If you get a chance, check it out. But yeah, like Jericho and Benoit reminded me a lot of like Triple H and The Rock, and that they were guys that were rivals and had incredible matches against each other. But when they were both like put against the wall against Austin and Triple H, they were like, all right, we don't like each other, but we'll work together just to fucking take these two guys down. And Jericho and Benoit had some great matches that year too. Like they had that ladder match at the Royal Rumble that year, which is fucking amazing. Sometimes the problem with rewatching some of the Benoit matches though is like sometimes he takes these unnecessary hits to the head, and it just makes you think like, man, what if?
Yeah.
But that match on Raw was fucking incredible. And then the very next night on SmackDown, they had to defend the tag titles in a 4-way TLC match with the Hardys, Edge and Christian, and the Dudleys. Where I believe that's the match Benoit actually breaks his neck doing a headbutt from the top rope all the way to the ringside through a table.
Yeah.
So he'd end up missing, like he'd wrestle for a few more weeks after that, but he pretty much would be gone for over a year after that. How about you, Rocky? Early 2000s to 2010 era.
Well, when I look back at this, I mean, you can put a lot of the ones we talked about in the '90s and in the 2000s. I mean, Edge and Christian, the Dudley Boys, all those were like 2000s too. But there's one that we haven't discussed that also came about in the late '90s, but went through to the early 2000s as well. And that's the Acolytes, Farouk and Bradshaw. And I have to say, I loved them as the Acolytes. But when they became the APA in the early 2000s, they were fucking great.
Yeah, just a couple of ass kickers too, man.
Yeah. It just they always had well, it started off as just the office, but then they put that little sign up and said the APA office on the door.
Yeah, at the door.
And you had to like knock on the door, make sure.
And they were just, I mean, like you said, they were just a couple ass kickers. When they came out, you knew what they were going to do, and it was entertaining just watching them. Bradshaw and Farouk played well with each other, and I didn't expect them to be comedic at all. But when they formed the APA, it was fucking hilarious. Like every time they showed up. So yeah. I was a big fan of the Acolytes. The whole time though, like even when they were with the corporation, I was still a big fan of Acolytes.
I mean, those guys were brute force, and I don't know if any of you guys remember this one, but when Public Enemy got hired to WWE, one of their first matches was against the Acolytes, and they, before the match started, said that they're not going to lay down for them. So the Acolytes went ahead, and this was on Sunday Night Heat, and just proceeded to beat the living shit out of them. Like legit, just wallop the hell out of them with chairs, tables, the whole thing, and just left them there in the ring.
Yeah, the Public Enemy pretty much quit after that match because they weren't ready for that Acolyte brutality, which apparently they tried to do the same to the Dudleys. Bradshaw and Farouk were like stiffing the fuck out of them, and Bubba and Devon were like, "Well, I guess they want a receipt. I guess so." They started stiffing the fuck out of them back, and it was like, all right, we're cool. So, but yeah, definitely the Acolytes, they were a lot of fun. Like I said, I'm currently rewatching right now in 2004. Bradshaw and Farouk just split up, and he just started the JBL character. At the time, I wasn't a fan. Rewatching it now as an adult, I'm finding him very entertaining and see how he's getting that heel heat with the crowd. But yeah, definitely a great tag team. They were like 3 or 4 time tag team champions as well. Another favorite tag team for me is John Morrison and The Miz. Kind of reminds me a lot of the Rockers in a way. And they, for a while there in like 2007, 2008, they were having like the best segments on Raw. And then they had them win the titles. Like they were originally supposed to just be like on ECW, but they ended up having them win the tag team title, so that they could basically start having them be on all 3 shows at once. And they had some really great matches as well. The Miz ended up becoming WWE champion, but I don't think Morrison ever got the accolades he deserves. He definitely should have gotten up to that level as well, I think.
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, Morrison is an insanely athletic person, even to this day. The guy's kept in phenomenal shape, can still do a lot of the same spots that he could 15 years ago almost at this point. And he's gotten better on the mic. He's gotten better as a character. Who knows if now they might even try to do a mini run with a title on him, with a singles title at least. Either the Universal title or if they cross-brand the titles again and switch the WWE Championship to SmackDown and put the Universal back on Raw, something like that.
Yeah, I mean, he got to he won the ECW title when they brought that back, but yeah, he never really, like I said, he put on some great matches with like Jeff and Edge and all of those guys. I know we've mostly been discussing WWE, WCW teams, but I definitely want to give a shout out to a couple teams from like TNA at the time, like America's Most Wanted was a really good tag team at that time. It was Chris Harris and who was the other guy?
James Storm.
James Storm, yeah. Chris Harris showed up for like a cup of coffee in WWE.
Yeah, he didn't last long.
He didn't last long, unfortunately. And I'm trying to think who.
The original LAX, I enjoyed them a
Yes.
lot. Hernandez and Homicide.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They were great. I think this might be 2010s, but Beer Money, they were a really good tag team too. I know it's crazy to think like at some point in the 2000s, like tag team wrestling became almost like a lost art. They just started throwing random guys together in tag teams. Like fucking Rene Dupree and Kenzo Suzuki were tag team champions, and Charlie Haas and Rico were fucking tag team champions.
You just put up another tag team that. Well, no, I was gonna say right now when you mentioned Haas, I can't believe I completely forgot about these guys. Him and Shelton Benjamin.
Yeah, they were really great.
Team Angle, yep. Great tag team.
As I'm rewatching, like I said, I'm doing this rewatch of 2004. What a wasted opportunity with Shelton Benjamin too at the time. They had him show up on Raw, beat Triple H 2 weeks in a row. Then they have him beat Ric Flair at Backlash, and then he beats Randy Orton, and just like I don't understand why they didn't do more with him. Yeah, he was terrible on the mic, but like the dude was talented. But yeah, it's kind of sad, man. Tag team I did enjoy in the late like 2008, 2009 is Chris Jericho and the Big Show.
Yeah, I remember that. That was actually a good tag team.
Yeah, they were like Jericho as the heel, wearing the business suit or whatever. That was a really good tag team. It's one of those times where Jericho just reinvented himself and was he's one of my favorite guys of all time, to be honest with you guys. And it's probably that's why, because of how he's reinvented himself so many times.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. The guy, I mean, he is somebody that can just almost get anything over. I mean, you look at his last 5 years, the stuff that he's gotten over, between AEW and WWE, the list, the champion, the bubbly, now the demo god. Like the guy just has a niche for finding, that one thing that'll just even if it's popular for 6 months to a year, he'll just market it until it's dead.
Yeah.
He's a great heel. Like when you look back on all of his most memorable characters, though, like you remember him as the heel. Like even here in AEW, he is a great heel in AEW.
Yeah. I remember he wrote in his book that for a couple weeks, like in 98 or something like that, 97, 98, they put him and Eddie Guerrero together in the tag team for like a couple weeks. And then for some reason they were like, all right, never mind, or whatever. And so he writes in his book, you know, like, we're the tag team that never made it. And he's like, him and Eddie would say our tag team name is A and Way. You know, Way, for you guys, Way is like a slang term, is a Spanish slang term. But, you know, doing the whole Canadian and Mexican, you know, thing, A and Way.
Connection.
Yeah, it's kind of sad that, like I said, tag team wrestling wasn't that big. There were a few teams here and there, like Deuce and Domino. Trying to think, like the Spirit Squad fucking held those titles for a while. They were terrible.
I mean,
they made Kane and Big Show a tag team for a while.
Yeah, they did. Everything was very makeshift for the mid 2000s, from what I can remember, and it was mainly like stuff that guys that they couldn't figure out what to do, so would put them together and give them the belts. Because at one point you had a combination of Kofi with CM Punk, Kofi with Evan Bourne with CM Punk. They were all tag team champions in one type of form of team or another, and that was just like the common thread that was going on, even when they had to split titles too. It was everything. It was kind of like, all right, we can't figure out what to do with these two guys. We'll put them together, put the belt on them, until we can kind of figure out what's what.
Mm-hmm.
Was it rated RKO during that time?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They were pretty entertaining, feuding with DX at the time. Although this version of DX wasn't like the late 90s.
No,
DX.
It wasn't the good DX.
Yeah. That was
like
DX.
It was like two dads telling dad jokes, DX. I mean, I'm not gonna completely lie and say I didn't laugh at some of the shit they did, but yeah, it wasn't as good as the original DX. But Triple H and Shawn going out there dressed as Vince and Shane was pretty fucking hilarious. Yeah, around the beginning of the next decade is when they started introducing some of the tag teams. You know, they brought in the Hart Dynasty, the Usos, which they're a great fucking tag team, by the way. They're Rikishi's sons, actually, for those who don't know, Jimmy and Jay Uso. And then the New Day have been really good. Kind of wish they would make them heel again. They were really entertaining as a heel group. But actually, based on their title reigns and number of days held, they're actually the top WWE tag team in history. They've held the titles longer than any other tag team ever has.
Yeah.
These guys never really got as much love as they deserved, but Luke Harper and Eric Rowan were a really good tag team. But
you had the Wyatts, which was a great act. You had the Shield, which was
a great tag team.
Trio.
Yeah, the Shield was a great tag team. Goldust and Cody Rhodes actually worked pretty well together as well. Before they did the Stardust thing.
The end of Cody Rhodes being in WWE.
Pretty much.
Yeah,
Pretty much.
that was the end of that.
Actually, I will say another tag team that was from the early 2000s that I really did enjoy was Booker T and Goldust as a tag team.
They were really entertaining.
That was hilarious stuff that they did. And how they worked the electrocution that caused Goldust to have a stutter. And
they would do all the shit to get those Booker T facial reactions. Goldust would be like,
exactly.
You give me a taste of your Slurpee and I'll give you a bite of my wiener or whatever when they're inside the 7-Eleven or whatever. Just stupid shit like that, or them doing the whole Rock promo with the Rock too. It was very entertaining stuff. It's sad that they only won the titles one time, and I want to say they only held it for like 3 weeks. But that's when Booker got really red hot. So I think they were like, all right, let's kind of have Booker go do his own thing. But then they didn't even bother putting the title on Booker. So it was just lost,
Yeah, lost momentum.
Yeah. But I think we've said everything we could say on tag teams, unless anyone else has any other teams they want to throw in there.
I will make one mention for the 2000s worst tag team, Chronic.
That should be the Invasion.
Or the Invasion in general, you're right.
That was disappointing damn tag team stable shit I've seen in wrestling history.
Well, Chronic was so fucking bad.
Yeah.
In their one match against the Brothers of Destruction that they were literally fired, like, I want to say minutes after the match ended.
Yeah. As soon as they walked to the back.
No amount of Undertaker clout was able to save Bryan Adams and Brian Clark.
You guys are fired.
Yeah. Actually, they weren't fired. They were told to go to OVW to train since apparently they didn't know how to wrestle anymore. I want to say Vince signed them without having seen them recently, but if I remember reading the story correctly, he was like, oh, well, I remember that guy being Atom Bomb or whatever. So and the other guy, doing a couple shots with us. So it should be fine. And then, yeah.
You guys, oh, shit, you guys forgot what you're doing.
Do you remember a tag team, Jose, called Gemini?
Oh, my God, yes. That was terrible.
They were like twin brothers. And dude, I want to say they were only on like 2 episodes of SmackDown ever, but they were fucking terrible. I think Simon Dean was the manager.
2000.
Yes.
Yeah, Simon Dean, I remember them. And then Techno Team 2000 was the team.
That was in the mid-90s. That was
the bootleg Chronic, basically.
Yeah, that was a
right,
Cowboy Bill Watts kid. I also mentioned a tag team called the Dicks. Do you remember that?
I do. I remember those guys. Yeah.
It was just an excuse so that Taz and Michael Cole could say the Dicks on television, basically. Well, we're just saying their last name.
Right.
There was also I put them as like one of my top tag teams, but the Harlem Heat without Booker T. Remember that?
Ahmed
Johnson. Yeah. Like, what the fuck?
and Booker and they changed Ahmed Johnson's name to Big T.
Yeah.
and then he had a match against Booker over the letter, who could use the letter T.
And then Booker became G.I. Bro and joined the Misfits in action.
That was a fucking terrible team.
That
too.
was fucking horrible.
God.
General Rection,
Lieutenant Loco.
Lieutenant Loco, G.I. Bro, Major Guns.
And then
I forgot what
like
last.
a shitty tag team, and also a shitty Saturday morning cartoon.
Yep. Oh my
Like the Great Value or Dollar General version of G.I. Joe.
G.I. Bro, man. Shit.
G.I. Bro, a real shitty hero. No one gives a fuck.
You didn't just say that. Tell me you didn't just say that.
I did say that.
Oh shit.
Yeah, it's like fucking dude. Some of those matches that they had towards the end of WCW, man. Like some of those gimmick matches, fucking Coal Miner's Glove and San Francisco 49ers match. And
That's the shit that actually, that's when I was like, you know what? Maybe I just need to be done with wrestling for a while.
Pinata on a pole match.
We could do a whole podcast on how shitty WCW was at the end.
Oh yeah, there's plenty of material there to just mine.
Yeah.
Well, like I said, there's a gold mine of shit in the early 90s.
Yeah.
Look at 90 to 93.
My favorite description, if you guys listen to Tony Schiavone's podcast, late towards the end of WCW, he described it as a coffin on roller skates going downhill.
Oh my god.
It's a very accurate description.
And of course, David Arquette, world champion.
Yeah, I've got Roddy Piper. I share the same opinion that Piper shares about celebrities in the ring. I don't like them.
I don't know. There's some that's okay, like Pete Rose. I mean, you got to say that the Pete Rose stuff was fucking hilarious.
Well, it was fucking hilarious, but he wasn't trying to wrestle.
Well, yeah. I mean, he wasn't going to be champion.
He's not trying to get in there and legitimately wrestle.
He's just trying to get paid.
Yeah, so far the only celebrity that's done okay is what's his name? Green Arrow, Stephen Amell. Like from what I've seen, the few times I've seen him, he's not bad. But I've just never been a fan of like letting the celebrity go over. I understand why they did it at the first WrestleMania and stuff like that, Hogan and Mr. T. But like there's other times, like why the fuck did Kevin Federline beat John Cena one time, or the Floyd Mayweather stuff, or fucking or Snooki being at WrestleMania, or just bullshit like that.
Snooki was at WrestleMania?
Yeah.
Snooki had a match.
Are you? I do not remember this at all. This is the fucking stupidest thing I've ever heard. This is a person that should be wiped from existence, not at WrestleMania.
It was Dolph Ziggler teaming up with
Morrison.
Michelle and Layla versus Morrison, Trish Stratus, and Snooki.
Fucking Trish Stratus.
And this was like Trish Stratus like 4 years after she retired, so she actually came back for this garbage.
Yeah.
But yeah, as we end this podcast, like I said, if whenever this post on our Facebook page, just leave your comments. Tell us what some of your favorite tag teams are.
And I do know that some of you out there love Honky Tonk Man, so I already know.
There's
Yeah,
definitely
yeah.
at least one person out there who wants us to do a honky tonk podcast. Not gonna fucking happen, but
Oh my God.
His name is Wayne Ferris. For those of you who don't know, that's Honky Tonk's real name. But he's the one that wants us to do an episode on him. But so yeah, if you're enjoying this show, leave us a 5-star review on wherever you pick up the podcast to listen to. And definitely thanks a lot to Jose for joining us. I know it's kind of last minute, but I'm sure we'll have you on here again at some point.
Oh yeah, absolutely, man. I enjoyed it. Had fun with you guys. Anytime you want me, just let me know.
Appreciate that. So thanks for joining us this week. For myself, Rene, and my co-host Rocky.
Later, guys.
And my other co-host Roland.
Guys, have a good one. Stay safe and stay healthy out there.
Yep. Have a good night, everybody.